Hey everybody, welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 89, A Little Princess. We've got a lot to talk about today, so I want to tell you about our next episode, then we can get right into it. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking about Wim Wenders' 1987 romantic fantasy, Wings of Desire, starring Bruno Ganz as an angel, invisibly observing the people of Berlin, who decides to become mortal to be with a human woman played by Solveig Domartin. If you're an American millennial and that plot sounds familiar, picture it with 100% more Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, and you've got 1998's City of Angels. That's right, 1998's City of Angels was more than just a delivery device for the absolute banger Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. We'll be looking at both of those movies in 2 weeks on Tuesday, April 20th. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, Episode 89, A Little Princess. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw. I'm going by Ari now. I'm trying it out.
I was wondering, I wasn't going to pressure you, but I knew this was a thing that was happening, and I never asked you when was it going to make it to the show.
I'm trying it out.
Today.
Today.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about A Little Princess.
How excited are you to talk about A Little Princess?
I'm very excited. It's Friday night. It's been a bit of a week. I don't know why I'm talking like this.
How long has this been on our list?
Since the very beginning. Very, very beginning. Very
Did you know you wanted to
beginning.
do this one before The Secret Garden?
No, I wanted to do The Secret Garden, but it is a bigger episode. And we are going to do it. Like soon, I think. I would like to do it soon as a follow-up.
Let's call it sooner rather than later.
Sooner than later.
It's not going to be like Sherlock Holmes Part 3.
Yeah. Which will never happen.
Happened and probably will never happen.
Will never happen. Should we just give up?
No, we're not going to give up. This one of those things that literally not a week goes by that I don't
you feel some guilt?
A good amount. No, not just the guilt. I feel the guilt daily. I'm saying not a week goes by that I don't spend time thinking about how could we do it. I'm planning.
Yeah.
I'm planning. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
But Little Princess is happening.
Yeah. Do you want to just do a little tiny bit of banter?
I thought that's what we were doing.
Okay.
Do you want to start the banter?
Yeah.
Do your banter.
We had a bit of a week. We were going to record last night, and we had to take our dog back to the emergency hospital.
Are you going to tell this story?
For reasons that were gross and bad.
Okay, do the gross thing. If you don't want to hear the gross thing, skip ahead 30 seconds. You've got 30 seconds to say the gross thing.
He still has some scabs on him from his incident. And he's been
Mauled
in the cone.
by pit bulls,
Mauled by
the
pit
way.
bulls. He's been in a cone because he can't be trusted not to lick at himself. I noticed that one of his scabs was coming up, and it looked gross underneath. And so in the evening, I called the vet to see if we should take him in.
You have 10 seconds.
Emergency vet. And they said, no, he's fine. I hung up the phone. He had, wearing his cone, had managed to maneuver around
You're
himself.
over 10 seconds. Everyone just jump back in, and you're
Here's
still
the
going to
gross-
say the gross thing.
I'm about to say the gross thing, so go forward another 30 seconds. Eaten his entire scab off of himself and was bleeding and gross. So I had to walk back into the other room, call the vet back, and say, never mind, we're bringing him in, which Jeremy then had to do. And yeah.
My night, I had a worse night than you.
Yeah,
because when I went to the emergency vet, I got there and I called them and I had to wait out in the car with the dog, and then someone came out to get him, and I was there for maybe an hour and a half. I was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I saw lots of cute things. I saw a little Westie with a hurt leg. They brought this little dude out on a walk, and then I saw a big yellow lab with a hurt leg. I thought it was a tripod. Turns out just one of the legs was like not so good.
Yeah.
And so I saw lots of delightful things and cute animals that had been through some tough times. But there was a car next to me. and there
God.
was a mom and her 2 tween daughters, and they were having a bad night, and I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that the daughters were crying a lot. And then someone came out and they took a carrier that looked like a cat carrier, and they went inside, and they went inside, and they were in there for a long time, and then they came out, and the daughters were still crying, and the cat carrier seemed very light, and they went home.
Yeah.
And I found out from one of the technicians that they lost their cat that night. I watched like the worst night in these girls' young lives.
This is not really our tragedy to tell, but like these are essentially anonymous people. We don't know who they are, and we'll never see them.
It broke my fucking heart. And I was texting you the entire time, like updates on what was going on.
He just texted me, these girls are crying. They're having a bad night. And then like half an hour later, they just came out. The carrier is empty. Oh, God.
It was terrible.
I'm so sorry.
So I had a worse night than you. But our dog's gross. Anyway.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine.
But now we got some drinks in us.
Yeah.
And it's Friday night.
Yeah.
And we're talking about A Little Princess.
Let's do it.
A thing you love that, like many
Get
things.
your finger out of my face.
That up until now meant nothing to me. Like so many things we do on this show, it meant nothing to me.
Now it means everything to you.
I fucking love A Little Princess so much. It's so good. This book is perfect. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do people know?
Yeah.
Are people aware?
Yeah, buddy.
Do we need to tell people that A Little Princess is really good?
You know which people know?
Which people?
Ladies. People who were socialized as girls, as children. They know. I am going to get on my soapbox for a hot second. This is why I find it so terrible that boys are not encouraged to read books about girls, because books about girls are fucking good. And if you, a boy in this world of toxic masculinity, brought a book called A Little Princess onto the playground and sat down to read, I believe you'd get your ass kicked doing a thing like that. But why should that be the world in which we live? Why should it be that boys don't read A Little Princess and The Secret Garden and Little Women and Anne of Green Gables and all these wonderful books that many, many people, who many of whom happen to be women, have loved for years and are thought of as lesser than and not literature because they are things that women like? The end. Gender is a construct.
I'm laughing because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
No, hey, let me help you down from there.
Okay.
Your soapbox is so tall.
It's so tall.
But yeah, let's talk about this because we have a lot to talk about, and I feel like we should get started.
Okay.
Can I kind of run through kind of generally what we're talking about today?
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the book. We are going to talk about the 1917 silent movie, the one with Mary Pickford as Sarah Crewe, our hero. Then we're going to talk about the 1939 The Little Princess, starring Shirley Temple.
Miss Shirley Temple.
Temple, is that correct? This is the first Shirley Temple movie I've ever watched. How crazy is that?
I thought you were going to say it's the first one we've done for the show, which is also true, and it's batshit that you've never seen a Shirley Temple movie
Just
before.
never have.
Anyway, continue.
Just never have.
Again, men not seeing things that are good.
But weren't some of them super racist?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, including this one.
This one's not awesome.
Yeah, keep going.
We watched Princess Sarah, which was a 1985 anime TV show. We watched the 1986 miniseries The Little Princess that was like a British-American co-production. And then we watched the 1995 American movie.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get it out of the way. As with many things, there are versions we didn't watch, some because we couldn't get them. There was like a 70s miniseries that we would have watched, but we couldn't.
Does not appear to be extant.
There are like some international versions. I think there was a Russian movie that was made in like 97. Couldn't really get a hold of it. So yes, those are the versions we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And I guess we should get started with this book.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this. We did not actually prep for how we were going to do this. Just peek behind the curtain. I feel very prepared to give a plot summary, but I kind of think it might be funnier if you did it.
Okay.
What do you think?
Let me go for it.
You do it.
So let me start at the very beginning. England invaded India.
Oh, God.
And
This is before the book began.
And basically, England was a superpower and colonized essentially the whole world.
Yes.
And as everyone agreed and still agrees, this was a good thing. This was a good thing. They tamed they tamed the natives.
Oh, God.
It was good.
Oh, God.
This was good. This was good for everybody.
I do not approve this
They
message.
also did many different things, like, started mines in Africa. This was also a good thing because they need to make sure that they take the wealth of those countries and move it out of those countries to England. I wanted to get all that shit out of the way because it's going to come up it'll come up in dribs and drabs.
Yeah.
Throughout.
There's themes of colonialization that perhaps go a little bit unexplored in the text of the book, and maybe all of these movies, but that we certainly, could not let pass without commenting upon.
I just want to comment on it.
Yeah, that's fine. You can comment.
I'm not sitting here like super offended. I'm just commenting
This
on it.
is not the plot of the book, A Little Princess, though.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, so there's this
I
girl.
might take this away from you if you can't keep on topic.
I'll be good. There's this girl named Sarah Crew. She lives with her father in India, and her mother is dead. And this is like around 1900.
Yeah.
Or so. It's around when the book was written.
As mothers often are in around 1900, the mother is dead.
Yes, because times were tough back then.
Yes.
And essentially, based on a number of different reasons, he decides that he is going to put his girl into a boarding school in London.
Yes.
Because he is from England. And he brings her there, and he leaves her there. And one of the things that he is going to do is he's going to go to Africa to basically start a diamond mine with a friend of his, who has said, I've got the thing for you. I've got a diamond mine. You should come join me. And he's like, I trust my friend, and I've got a lot of money, so I'm going to go do that. And so they do. And his young girl, Sarah, is left at Miss Minchin's school.
Okay. Can you describe Sarah?
So Sarah Crew is a very interesting... I don't know why I started saying that like I'm doing a book report in like fucking 8th grade.
This is a very interesting book. Everyone should read it. It has 347 pages. I liked it.
Sarah Crew's great, and I want to give you some reasons why I think Sarah Crew is great. One, she's really fucking strong. Like, as a character, she has real strength of character. But what she isn't is she's not like... so I'll bring up the concept of like a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
Right? She's not one of these characters that's like, oh, she's just a free spirit and does things the way, whatever she wants. And she makes people question their lives and makes people question like the way they live their lives, that kind of thing. She just has very, very strong strength of character.
Yeah.
And she needs that strength because her dad dies and life gets very hard for her.
Yeah.
She's a very imaginative girl.
Mm-hmm.
She is a very kind girl. She is a very compassionate girl. She's a very empathetic girl.
Very intelligent girl.
Super smart.
And like precocious, like in an unusual, she's unusually wise. She's like an old soul.
But incredibly humble.
Yes.
Some might say more than she needs to be.
Yeah.
I think she has an excess of humility. But it is one of the things that works in her favor.
Yeah.
What else have I missed? What other aspects of Sarah Crew have I left out?
Well, one of the things about Sarah, so she comes to this school, right? And her dad is like super rich and kind of flashy. And so he just wants her to have the best of everything.
Yeah.
And so he's like, the best parlor and, your own sitting room and your own bedroom and a maid and a pony and like everything that you would have at home, like you're going to have at this school. And of course, this is more than any other. And her clothes are like so beautiful and perfect, and she has this wonderful doll named Emily, and all of Emily's clothes are custom made too. And she takes like dancing lessons, and she's beautiful. She's not beautiful actually, but she is interesting looking. But you would think that would like endear her to the girls at the school, and it does to some of them. But some of them are very jealous of her and very mean to her, and they call her sort of derogatorily a princess. And she kind of takes it almost as a compliment. That's the thing about the title of the book, right? A little princess. It's not princess as we think of princess today as being like a word that means like a spoiled person. When Sarah says, I like to imagine that I'm a princess, she means literally someone of the royal family who has a strong character no matter what her circumstance. And sometimes she compares herself to Marie Antoinette.
Yeah.
Like even when she was in her worst situation, she still had dignity. That's something she thinks. She's actually very interested in the French Revolution.
Well, her mom was French.
Her mom was French, correct. And she speaks French fluently. And another unfortunate thing is that one of the people that kind of hates Sarah and is a little bit jealous of her is her school teacher and the proprietress of the establishment, Miss Minchin.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not bode well for Sarah because, as you pointed out before, her dad dies. And it turns out the diamond mines were a bust and there is no money. And Sarah is penniless and an orphan and left on Miss Minchin's hands. And her dad died owing Miss Minchin quite a great deal of money for all of Sarah's expenses. So
it seems you've taken this from me.
No, I was
Did
about
I do a bad job?
No, you didn't do a bad job. In fact, I was about to toss it back to you.
Oh, thank you.
So this bad thing happens that you earlier referred to. What happens then?
I want to go through the rest of the book a little quickly.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a ton of time.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Let me just skip to the end really quick. Everything turns out fine, and it turns out she is rich.
You've
Lem-
skipped a bit far.
I know, but I'm going to come back and then I'm going to loop back to that.
Okay.
There's all these kind of different plots that all kind of come together. One of the things that happens is this gentleman moves in next door. This is after she has, it is assumed she is penniless. She is now an orphan. She lives in the attic. Miss Minchin has said, you're going to work off your debt, essentially, and she now works for the school. She's a maid,
She's
essentially.
very put upon. She lives up in the attic with the rats and her only friend, the scullery maid, Becky, who's very sweet.
Becky's great. We'll talk about Becky.
Yeah.
A gentleman moves in next door to the empty house, this guy, and all the stuff he has is all Indian, and she recognizes it because she lived in India. She grew up in India. It's where she lived her whole childhood. And so they refer to him as the Indian gentleman, and he's got, they never see him, and he's got this, manservant, who is actually Indian.
Yes.
The two of them kind of establish a relationship because she's like looking at her attic window and he sees her and she knows his language and he's like, oh, this is delightful. And he has a monkey and stuff like that. And she likes that. And essentially, several things are happening at the same time. And not everyone knows about everything. So the audience, the readers, we find out that the guy who moved in next door is a guy named Mr. Carrisford, who was the friend who got her dad into the diamond mine.
Dun, dun, dun.
And turns out they thought it was bust. It wasn't. But by the time they found out it wasn't, her dad was dead. And Mr. Carrisford, out of guilt, has the brain fever.
He's got that brain fever.
And so he has come back to London to recuperate from his
fever.
feverish brain. We find that out. It's like, holy shit. And that's like halfway through the book, somewhat, something like that. Maybe a little more than halfway through the book.
That he was the friend?
Yeah.
Yeah. We find it out before Sarah finds it out.
Right. She doesn't find out until like the very end in a chapter that the chapter is titled, it is the child.
It is the child.
Which is just great. And we find out that the thing he is looking for is the daughter of his friend, Captain Crew.
Yeah, he doesn't know where she is.
Doesn't know where she is. He's got like some leads. He thinks she maybe was in Paris and then maybe went to Russia. And he's got a solicitor who lives in London with his family, and he's basically sending this guy to look for this girl.
And he lives across the street.
Yeah.
So they all live on the same street together.
Separately, Sarah several times has interacted with this family and thinks they are just delightful. And she is so jealous because the thing she wants more than anything, like a tiny Jane Eyre, the thing she wants more than anything is a family.
Yes.
And they have a big family. They're such a large family that she calls them the large family.
Yeah.
And she invents names for all of them and everything. And it's just a delight.
And one of them gives her, the little boy is so sweet and gives her like a quarter or something. And she's like, oh, I can't take this. And he's like, no, you're a beggar. You should take it. And she's like, oh, no.
Yeah. And they end up calling her like the girl who's not a beggar.
Yeah.
Because she looks like a beggar but doesn't act like a beggar. And so we as the audience know, holy shit, they're right next door. Oh my God. But like, why would he look next door in this girls' school? Because his lead is telling him that she's in Paris.
And there's a whole bunch of like unwritten sort of stuff about class. Like she could never possibly be working as a servant because of course she is of a different class than servants are. Anyway.
So that's kind of those are two paths that are going. So Sarah's life is just getting worse and worse, and she's having a series of adventures in the school, and she's becoming friends with Becky, the scullery maid, and Becky is delightful. She's also friends with a girl named Ermengarde, who is like her defining characteristic is that she's dumb.
Like she's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying that as presented. There's a little girl named Lottie who she kind of is before she gets sent up to the attic. She kind of becomes Lottie's mom at the school because
Lottie's
both their moms are dead.
Yeah.
And these things are happening. And then all the plots kind of come together because Carrisford and his servant, Ram Dass, have basically decided, well, we are looking for the girl we're looking for, but there's this sweet girl who lives next door and her life sucks. Maybe we can do some nice things for her. So they like sneak into her attic room and they bring her food and blankets and all kinds of delightful things.
Like they send her nicer clothes. Yeah, I mean the thing about Sarah's life is like cannot be emphasized enough. Like they like don't feed her.
Yeah.
Like she's literally doing hard physical labor from morning until night, and they like sometimes throw her a crust of bread like when they remember. Like the description of her hunger is like actually very uncomfortable to read.
Yeah.
And Becky also. So like basically the idea is she never gives up hope for essentially a better world, and they sneak in at night while she's asleep. And when she wakes up, it's like she's in a dream.
Yeah. And she attributes it to
the magic.
What she calls the magic.
Yes.
Capital M.
Yes.
The magic.
Yes.
And Miss Minchin is the worst, and there's a whole series of events and things like that, and we are given
There's a monkey and all sorts of things.
I mentioned the monkey. We're given a whole bunch of things that talk about Sarah's character. There is in fact like my favorite chapter in the entire book, and the one that made me like I cried more than I've cried in a long time, and like yelled at you from the other room about how much I love this book. And it's the scene with the baker.
Yeah.
Can I describe the scene?
Yes.
Super
yes.
quick. Sarah, dejected, her life is terrible, everything's been going wrong. She is walking down the street, she hasn't eaten, and she sees in the street, what, a 4-pence piece?
Yeah, a 4-pence piece.
And she is like, oh, holy shit. And she happens to be standing in front of a baker. And she goes in, and the very first thing she asks the baker is, did someone drop this? Did one of your customers drop this? Or did you drop this? And the baker's like,
how would you know?
How would you know? But what
an honest child.
What an honest child. It's yours.
Yeah.
And Sarah's like, oh, can I buy some bread then? I would like 4 of your single penny rolls. And the baker's like, well, I like you so much, I'm going to give you 6. And then Sarah leaves with her 6 fresh rolls that she is so excited to eat. And she sees a kid who is clearly even hungrier than she is.
Yeah.
And she goes up to the kid, and they have a conversation about when the last time this kid has eaten. It was
never.
a while.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. And she gives the kid 5 of the rolls and keeps 1 for herself. And
Yeah.
the baker sees the entire thing. And the baker, after she leaves, it like goes up to the kid, and the kid's like, ah. And the baker's like, ah. And the baker's like, wait, what did 5? She only took 1. My goodness, I thought she was a great girl, and clearly she is finer a person than I could have hoped.
Yeah.
And what we find out at the end is that she brings the beggar in, and now the beggar works for her because she has witnessed such kindness and such empathy
Yeah.
and such compassion, and it inspires her to be a better person.
She pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the last chapter after Sarah's well again
Mhm.
and now living with Mr. Carrisford and the richest girl in all of England. She goes back to the baker and like essentially
living the dream where making it so her best friend works for her.
Yeah. I told you there's a bunch of like fucked up stuff about class in this book.
She takes Becky with her, but Becky doesn't get to live there as a
like her friend.
as a
she's
friend.
like she's her personal maid.
Yeah, but which is a huge step up
It's
for
a
Becky.
big step up for Becky. I mean, at least Sarah's gonna like make sure she's like fed.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway, this chapter fucking
Yeah.
blew me away. I cried so much. It's beautiful. I loved it.
Can I do a quick sidebar?
Yeah.
So like it just called to mind as a child, something actually similar happened to me. Possibly influenced by this book, actually, now that I think about it. I was on my way to school. I was walking to school, and by the side of the sidewalk, I found some money, like some cash that was clearly like some kids' lunch money. And I took it to the school office and I said, I found this money on the way to school. And they were like, I guess we'll ask around. Like, how would we possibly know like whose money this could be?
I feel like there's only one way you handle that situation, which is you hold on to it just in case anyone comes looking
Yes.
for it, and then no one ever will.
Yes.
And you wait a length of time.
Yes.
Whatever you want it to be, a week, a month, something like that, and
Yeah.
then the money is yours.
That's exactly what happened. They called me down to the office like a week or 2 later and said I could keep it.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, there you go.
So I got some money.
And
I was
then
like in 2nd grade.
You bought some rolls with it.
I don't.
You went into Subway
I
and
d-
you bought some bread. I'm just imagining what place bakes fresh bread.
genuinely have no idea what I bought with it or what I would have bought with it. I was like 8, so I have no clue.
Yeah, and what poor unfortunate did you end up sharing your spoils with?
None.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It was just a story about how I turned in some money
How
that
you
nobody could
found some
possibly
money.
have known where the money came from, but I was honest enough to turn it in.
Sweetie, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the whole thing ends and everything is revealed, and the whole thing. She like goes next door and she talks about living in India, and Carrisford's like, "What the fuck? You lived in
Lived in
India?"
India.
Ah.
And she's like, oh, yeah, my dad, was a soldier and he lost all his money because a friend tried to get him to invest
Yeah.
in some diamond mines. And the Mr. Carrisford's like,
And does not die.
he does not die.
But instead he says,
It is the
it
child.
is the child.
And they found her and they all lived happily ever
And
after.
boy, Miss Minchin is hoisted by her own petard because she's the worst.
And she gets yelled at by her sister and
her sister
everything.
Amelia, who we haven't even mentioned,
Yeah.
who's just a sweetheart.
She's great.
Like this book, we got to talk about like I guess 1 or 2 of the characters. Can we talk about Becky in detail for a second?
Yeah, let's talk about Becky real quick. Becky is, as Corky St. Clair would say, of the Cockney persuasion.
Yeah.
You want to go to Hartford? Not live in this LO. Please, someone get that reference. Someone will.
Someone did.
So she is like, her life is so bad. And I feel like we get a very, very detailed description of like how terrible Becky's life is.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How old is Sarah at the beginning of the story?
At the very beginning of the story,
Yeah.
she's like 7.
And how old is she by the end?
Like 11.
Right. So several years pass
Yeah,
over the course of this. How old is Becky, like in relation to Sarah?
Becky's older than Sarah. She's like between like 12 and 14.
Yeah. But that's like, it says so much about her that she's older, but she looks up to Sarah so much
Yeah.
because Sarah is a lady.
Yes.
And she never will be that.
Yeah.
And I just, one of my favorite things about their relationship is that Becky's older than she is.
Yeah.
They're not equals in any way possible.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
Yeah, like she like idolizes her, and Sarah, like even when Sarah's, rich and first comes to the school, like she tells her stories and like lets her like see like rest sometimes in her room, like by the fire, and like gives her food and stuff to eat. So like Becky's doing a lot better than she used to, and Becky just like loves her. And so when like Sarah falls from grace and loses her fortune, Becky is like, can I help her? Like, can I be her servant and like wait on her? And Miss Minchin's like, no, what the hell are you talking about?
Thank you for censoring yourself. This is for children.
That's fine. But like, and Sarah obviously, repays Becky as best she can, but like they're just sort of in it together. And then obviously when she becomes rich at the end, she takes Becky with her.
Yep.
So
to work for her.
To work.
Which is
continue
what
to
everyone
work.
wants to do with their
but
best
I'm
friend.
sure like her duties are probably very light. Like pretty much just to hang out with Sarah and like do her hair and stuff, I would imagine. I think we've covered most of the main characters. Let's get into it. If we've forgotten anybody, we can bring them up.
Well,
as
there's
we
like
go.
Ermengarde Lottie, who we talked about. There's Lavinia, who's terrible.
She's one of the girls at the school.
Amelia's the sister. Ramdas is the cool Indian guy who lives
it's kind
next
of a chamber
door.
piece. There's not like millions and millions of characters.
Crew's dead. Her dad's dead.
He's
He
dead.
never comes back.
Never comes back.
Can I talk about 2 things that I love about this book?
Yes.
1, I love that bad shit happens, and that's sometimes how life is. Think back to episode 50 of this show where we talked about Charlotte's Web, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And one of the things that's so beautiful in that book is that book doesn't shy away from the fact that like death is a thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the book can't have a happy ending if one of the main characters died or if death was somehow involved in the story.
Yeah.
And Crue's dead. Like her dad is dead. And she's still, because of her strength of character and because of the people she meets and the way she lives her life, she comes out the other side.
Yeah.
And we have a happy ending.
Yes.
That's one of the things I love about this book. I like a book that doesn't shy away from stuff like that, especially one for kids. The other thing that I love about this book, how do you feel about the disconnect between, these characters know this thing and these characters know this thing, but they don't know that the other knows?
Yeah, it's called dramatic irony.
Yeah. Between that and how long it takes for that part of the story to actually happen. Like how soon we go from the audience knowing it to Sarah finding out.
Yeah, because like, so one of the things I kept saying over and over again as we watched this is like, I feel like the set piece of this book, the thing that people remember, right, is the magic. It's Ramdas coming in while Sarah is asleep and making her room like beautiful and giving her like food and all kinds of stuff. Like that's like the visual image that you think about, right, when you think about this book. And the thing I kept saying is like that happens later in the book than you think.
Yeah.
Like it happens so late in the book.
It's like 3rd act.
Yeah. So like by the time she's wondering what's going on and the pieces are starting to come together and you're going, ooh, like there's misconnections, like I hate this, it's uncomfortable, like it's almost already solved. Like it doesn't last that long. So I feel okay about it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
This is one of the things I loved about it. That was great.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's the book. Do you want to move on to the movies?
Could I talk just really quickly about some like behind the scenes on the book?
Sure.
For a moment. Because we haven't even talked, I don't even think we have said the name Frances Hodgson Burnett.
She is the author of this book.
She also
The
wrote
Secret Garden.
Yeah, she wrote The Secret Garden. She wrote Little Lord Fauntleroy. She was born in England, moved to the United States with her parents at the best time you could possibly move to the United States, 1865. They moved to Tennessee. Nothing.
The best time to move to Tennessee.
Oh my God, what a great time to move here.
Nothing going on in Tennessee.
What an interesting person. We could spend the entire episode just talking about her and her life, because what an interesting life she led, but ended up becoming an author, wrote a lot. So she's this transplant. She's she's British, but living in America for years and ended up going back to England many, many times, living in Paris, stuff like that. It just informed so much, I think, of what she wrote. But like, it really makes the I think the setting of the book in London, it makes it really specific,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because she chose to set it in London. It wasn't just, oh, I live in England, so I'm going to set it where I live. She chose to set it there. She
Yeah.
could have set it anywhere because her experience had led her to so many different places.
Did she ever go to India? Because both this and The Secret Garden feature like little girls who were raised in India.
I don't know.
Great.
I wonder if England at the time talking about India was just a thing people did because
Yeah.
of course they saved India,
Right.
as I said before.
Oh boy.
Thank God for England.
Thank God for colonialism.
Yeah, really, just a beautiful gift to the world.
Oh my God. I do not endorse this message.
One other thing about this, though, that I think is so fascinating is she didn't, I'm sure you already know this, but like she didn't just write this book. It was originally published as a short story called Sarah Crewe, or What Happened at Miss Minchin's, which was serialized in a magazine called St. Nicholas Magazine starting in 1887, and then it was published in book form in 1888.
Uh-huh.
Then she adapted it to a play in 1902 called A Little Unfairy Princess.
Uh-huh.
And then her publisher said, you should make this a novel, which she did. And it was originally published with the title A Little Princess, being the whole story of Sarah Crewe now being told for the first time.
There you go.
So, like, this is not the first. You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like,
it went through a number of iterations.
You can't really just judge the book as a book on its own. You have to judge it in the context of the other things that came before, where it was a radio play first. So the book is like, she already had time to kind of perfect the story. It went through very public drafts so she could really figure it out and workshop it, which I think is one of the reasons why the book is it's a perfect book.
It's really good.
Like, it's just...
The timing, the pace is so good. The dialogue is really good. She has such an ear. Like, I mean, it's Becky's like dialect, the way it's written out is a little awkward, but like she has an ear for dialogue.
I'm just saying, like, structurally, just as a book, this is a perfect book.
Yeah.
We can talk about colonialism. We can talk about all the problematic stuff in it. But just from a writing perspective, I think it's a perfect book.
Sure.
But yeah, we have spent a lot of time talking about the book.
Yeah.
A lot of that was me talking.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming you for that.
You had a lot to say.
This book is so good.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that we finally get to start talking about some of the stuff that we watched.
Yeah.
So 1917, there was a silent movie that was made.
It was silent movies.
It was directed by Marshall Nealon. It was written by Frances Marion, and it starred, as I said before, Mary Pickford as Sarah Crewe.
Mary Pickford, like the Shirley Temple of her day.
Yeah.
Like the biggest star, fully an adult, like a small adult playing children, but a huge influencer in the movie business. She went on to be one of the founders of United Artists. Like, she was a businesswoman in the film industry.
Yeah. She's a fucking powerhouse.
A huge powerhouse. She was also, how old was she when she made this film?
That's a really good question. She's 25?
She was 25
was she
playing
25?
Yeah, 25 playing like an 8-year-old, which is like not a great look.
That's just a thing we've seen before.
It's just how it was. It's just how it was.
Can I just talk about some of the other people that are in this movie?
Sure.
Not because I want to talk about their performances, but I think there are some names that are really fun.
Okay.
Although I will say Becky was played by Zazu Pitts. She was really good. Like, Mary Pickford is good in this. Zazu Pitts was really good in this.
Yeah, she's been in other stuff. I mean, she was a working actor up until like the 60s, I believe.
She's just a comic actor, that kind of thing. Mr. Carrisford, it lives next door. This they changed lots of stuff because the movie's only an hour long.
Yeah. And silent.
The thing I didn't know is that fully half the movie is one of the stories that Sarah is telling her classmates.
Yeah, it's so much. I wrote extended Alibaba sequence.
Geez. So anyway, yeah, Mary Pickford is an adult woman. Anyway, Mr. Carrisford does live next door, but the whole thing with like him being a business partner of her dad, that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But her dad is dead.
He's definitely fully dead.
And Mr. Carrisford does have a manservant named Ram Dass.
Yeah.
Ram Dass played by just a fine, who I'm assuming is a fine Indian actor, George A. McDaniel, which, why would I be surprised?
Like you do.
But do you know what the actor's name is who played Mr. Carrisford?
No.
It's the best name I've ever seen. Gustav von Seifertitz.
Okay.
I don't want to make fun of names from different places, but you know what? That's a fucking great name, and I love it.
All right. So, this movie, I mean, it's a silent film. So, they didn't have a lot to work with, right? Because, part of Sarah's charm is, how verbal and interesting she is. And I think they wanted to, they went a little too far in the other direction, trying to be like, Mary Pickford, she's a child, okay? She's a child. This is not, do not look behind the curtain. She's not a 25-year-old married woman.
How could a 25-year-old married woman be 4'10"? That's not a thing.
So they had her be like really bratty and like throwing tantrums and stuff. And we were just like, okay, this is not Sarah. Like,
That's not Sarah.
It's not Sarah. It's just not. It's just not what she would do. So anyway, there's this tiny little adult playing Sarah Crew, just kind of running around, making lots of faces.
Running around. There's a full-on chase action scene in this movie.
Right.
Do you remember? It's like her and two of her friends in a cart pulled by a horse, and one of them falls out,
and the policeman,
a police officer is like running after them, and he like picks up the girl, and he's like chasing after the cart. It's just a whole chase action scene in the middle of this.
This movie is nothing.
It's movie history.
It's nothing in the sense of like being an adaptation of A Little Princess. Like so much Alibaba. Like we just lost interest. As movie history, again, like it is really interesting that like the first two versions of this that we watched were Mary Pickford, Shirley Temple.
Yeah.
Like it's like a generation later, like that child star of the day. Mary Pickford, obviously not a child, but like playing children. I don't know. It is interesting that this was like the piece that was chosen for these young women.
I mean, it makes sense if you don't really give a shit about the source material. Like it makes perfect sense because you have a story about a young girl who goes through something really hard and the audience identifies with her. That's a movie.
Yeah.
Who cares if what we're doing isn't really the book? Sarah Crew isn't real. Our Sarah Crew is not really Sarah Crew. Like she just feels like a totally different character.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter because it's still compelling.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm saying is even if you fuck it up, it still is basically compelling.
Yeah. I mean, the general idea of like this rich girl that lost her fortune, and her dad died, but then gained her fortune again. Like that's a simple story.
Mm-hmm. There's not much to talk about with this. It did have one moment that we loved that kind of stuck with us. In the book, there's the scene where Ermengarde brings a basket of food to Sarah and Becky, and the three of them are going to have dinner. They're going to have a fun party.
Yeah.
And what happens right before they eat?
Well, they spend a lot of time like pretending. They're like, this is going to be a grand banquet, and like, let's talk about it. Like, our napkins are made of gold, and our plates are made of diamonds, and like all of the stuff as the food is sitting there, like waiting to be eaten. Like they make a big thing of it, and they're starving. Like they're starving to death, and they are wasting time on imagination. And like as they like open their mouths to bite into the sandwiches, like Miss Minchin bursts into the room and starts screaming at Ermengarde for like bringing her food, and they never get a bite. Like they never get a single bite of food. So in this, what happens?
Well, in this, what happened? I'm sorry, I'll say what happens, but then we need a sidebar really quickly.
Okay.
In this one, Miss Minchin breaks in, and Sarah's like, "Quick, Becky, eat as much as you can, as fast as you can."
Start shoving food in their mouths, and I was like, clearly, someone was just as uncomfortable as I was with this like idea that they didn't get to like eat any of the food.
I just feel like I figured you out. I feel like I had a puzzle that was my wife, and there was a piece missing, and I feel like I found the piece.
Okay.
I'm gonna put you on the spot for a second.
Okay.
We've talked about this before. Would you define yourself as like a whimsical person?
No.
Okay. You literally just said the phrase, "You are wasting your time on imagination." Did that like affect you when you were a kid? Do you not dive into your own imagination because you're worried that Miss Minchin is going to come through the door and ruin whatever fun thing is you're about to do?
Listen, I just had therapy yesterday. I did have a little bit of a breakthrough, not about this, that I will tell you about off air. I'm not quite ready for like another one within like 24 hours.
You're wasting your time on imagination. Clearly, this doesn't say anything about who I am as a person.
We'll talk about this off air.
I love you so much. But that scene was pretty funny, and it did stick with us through all the other versions that we watched. Like that was like I would say for us the most memorable moment. But yeah, this movie's like it's a silent movie, and we're super 50-50 on those. Sometimes they're super fun, like Nosferatu, and sometimes they're like the original 10 Commandments, which was really weird and had like a modern family. Anyway,
I just re-listened to that episode because it was Passover, and it's just as good.
I'm gonna go on record. It's my favorite episode we've ever done.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
It was great.
That's the one I re-listened to. To hear you talk, not to hear myself.
Let's move on.
In 1939, they made a new one. called The Little Princess, and this one was starring Shirley Temple, which we mentioned before. It was directed by Walter Lang, written by Ethel Hill and Walter Ferris. More importantly, it was produced by Daryl Zanuck, who, like, here are some other movies that he produced. I mean, he produced for years. Sound of Music, Planet of the Apes, MASH, Patton, Tora Tora Tora. This guy's done some big movies.
Daryl Zanuck is actually like an off-screen character in the movie All About Eve, which I'm contractually obligated to mention in every episode.
There you go.
But there's that great Betty Davis line, like, Zanuck, what? Are you two lovers? It's great.
It's very funny.
Anyway, go ahead.
Shirley Temple as Sarah Crew. I'm going through the cast list. Ian Hunter as Captain Reginald Crew. Ian Hunter. It blew my fucking mind in this because it's the guy who plays Richard the Lionheart in The Adventures of Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn one.
Of course,
but like he looks totally different because of the costume and everything. So it took me a while to figure out just the middle part of his face. Was the same person.
What's the guy's name that plays the brother? It's Arthur Treacher.
Yeah,
He's
so
like a famous song and dance man.
Right. So like this, so Arthur Treacher plays Hubert Bertie Minchin, whose Amelia has been turned into a song and dance man.
Yeah. He used to be on the vaudeville stage, but he's trying to keep that his dark secret.
Yes. Don't tell anybody. We've added new characters. There's now a teacher named Rose. There is her beau, who's like.
Speaking of Robin Hood,
Richard Green, who played Robin Hood in several versions that we watched.
Robin Hood, marching through the glen. Robin Hood with his band of men.
How handsome was he, by the way?
Feared by the bad.
Oh my God.
Loved by the good. He was in there was like 300 episodes of Robin Hood. This guy.
And how young was he in this?
So young, so handsome.
So handsome.
He played like the horse teacher that he's in love with Miss Rose, who's the teacher.
There's a whole thing, and Sarah is kind of like a matchmaker for the two of them.
Yeah.
Like she's invested in making sure that these two crazy kids get together.
Yeah.
This is a weird fucking movie.
Yeah. So tell me this. You'd never seen a Shirley Temple movie
Never
before.
one.
What was your impression of, like, put the plot aside for a minute. Like, what was your impression of Shirley Temple?
My impression of Shirley Temple is the general view in Hollywood must have been, what a goddamn find we have. She can do anything, even though she can't. Let's put her in everything, even though she's always just Shirley Temple.
Yeah.
That's my impression of her.
But
she's great.
She's great.
No, I
right?
want to, let me be clear. She's fucking great. She's a heck of an actor. She is a heck of a singer, heck of a dancer. What a personality. I get it.
That scene where she's saying goodbye to her dad is like, her acting is so natural, where she's like crying by the window and he's like, I guess I'll just leave because you're crying, and she's like, no, I can do it. And like that little like just the way that she like squares her shoulders and like straightens her chin, she's so sweet.
I'm just saying, I get it.
Yeah.
I get the Shirley Temple thing. It is a little weird for me that, like, she's not just American. She's so folksy in the way she talks.
Yeah.
Like, she's super American.
Yeah.
Playing the daughter of this British guy who grew up in India.
Sure.
Like, I couldn't get past it. I never saw her as Sarah Crew for 1 minute of this movie. She was Shirley Temple the entire time.
Yeah.
Especially when she's got her, like, songs and dances with Arthur Treacher.
Yeah.
And she's doing an amazing job, but, like, that's not Sarah Crew.
Yeah. That's fair.
And for some people, I have to assume that she is Sarah Crew.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sure for many, many people.
Right? But I fell in love with the book before I saw the movie, and so I couldn't get past that.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, Shirley Temple, she's great. I get it. I could not get past how much she just wasn't the character from the book.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a couple things about the plot, because this starts a few like grand traditions going for things that we would see.
Yeah.
First of all, this starts the tradition of the dad not being dead.
Yep.
Most of the versions we saw, frankly, the dad actually is dead. But like the two most famous ones, he is not dead. And it actually really struck me, and we'll talk
Captain Crew, who did not die.
We'll talk about this more, I think, when we talk about the 1995 movie, but it actually is pretty interesting how much the 1995 movie, that I think a lot of people, especially our age, are very familiar with, draws from this movie as opposed to the original source text. So that's one thing. I'm just putting that out there. The father is not dead.
We're planting lots of seeds.
And two, again, this is something that the 1995 movie does. I'm not sure if any other versions do this. I don't remember what it was in the miniseries, but that there is an active war happening, and the reason the father has left her is to go to the war, which gives a very good excuse, A, for him either being dead or like them not really being sure if he's dead or not, right? Because like in war, these things can happen. Two, the other thing I just wanted to mention, I usually don't, when we talk about adaptations, whatever, like they change a character's gender or like do something, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. I actually loved the brother in this, even though he had nothing to do with the original character, like Miss Minchin's sister.
He does a bit. He's very put upon, and then he finally stands up to his sister.
Yeah, it's true. But like this whole plot about how he was like, he used to be a vaudeville actor, and and now he's gone into business with his sister, and his sister's really ashamed of it, and they're like trying to keep that secret. That is nothing. That is like completely made up for this movie for some reason. But it led to this like really hilarious moment of us in our like 2021 like interpretation or whatever. When Captain Crew comes to drop Sarah off at the school, he does this thing where he like kind of does a double take and looks at Birdie and is like, have we met somewhere before? And Birdie's like, no, of course not. And we both looked at each other and we were like, are they gay?
It would be delightful if
it
they
would
were.
be so delightful if they were. This is not the first example of two men in this story that we
shipped
thought
people
that we thought
multiple
were in
times.
love with each other.
But
Anyway.
turns out his great shame is, oh no, you definitely have seen me on the stage.
On the stage, not behind, not like in the alley behind the stage door. On the
Yep.
stage, only on the stage. I wrote down, look at that smile. I don't know who I was talking about.
Oh.
I assume it was Shirley Temple.
Probably Shirley Temple.
I fell in love with her in this movie.
Did you?
I really did. I thought she was so sweet. It is weird to be talking about someone who, did she die?
Yes. Hang on. Yes, 2014.
Okay.
She died at 85.
Okay, so it is weird.
I thought she was still with us.
It is weird that I'm talking about someone who, if she were with us, would be like over 90 years old. She is so sweet. I feel like this is my "you'll understand someday" moment. Because I turned to you at one point and I was like, you know what? Calvin looks like Shirley Temple, and you were like, he does not.
Every baby looks like Shirley Temple. That's Shirley Temple's whole thing.
Yeah, she just looks like she has this perfect baby face, but he has like that really curly hair, and I think that's part of it. But I just really loved her in this movie. I didn't think she was Sarah Crew at all, but I loved her. You know what she never did in this movie ever?
What's that?
Pretend or use her imagination.
No.
Like not like barely once. Like sometimes she would like tell a story, or there's that sequence at the end where she's like imagining Miss Minchin. It's like kind of a little singing play where like she's the queen and Miss Minchin is like the evil
She's
witch.
a little princess.
And she's the princess. Yeah, well there you go. She's the princess. Yes, you're right. And Birdie is like the court jester, and they have this whole little sequence, and it's really fun. But like it's not the way that Sarah Crew imagines things. She doesn't like imagine things for revenge. She just imagines things like for her own enjoyment. The other thing, again, I feel like the more that I talk about this, the more that I wish we were about to talk about the 1995 movie and didn't have anything in between, because like there are so many direct parallels.
I'm sorry the 80s happened.
Yeah. Is that like, they don't really make a big thing about her being like cold and hungry. Like she's just kind of having a good time, like in the kitchen with her friend Becky, who is not very good at doing a Cockney accent.
Nope.
Like her life is not that miserable. She's just really sad because she thinks her dad is dead. And then at the end, they do find him, but he has amnesia, and then he recognizes
and Queen
her.
Victoria's there.
And Queen Victoria's there, and like brings them back together, and it's all very sweet, and the whole thing.
There's like
ends.
a military hospital which is nearby that she's constantly going to see if her dad is actually not dead, and he shows up, and there's a whole chase scene at the end where the Ram Dass, we didn't even talk about Ram Dass.
Ram Dass
in this.
is in it.
Ram Dass, played by Cesar Romero.
There you go.
The fucking Joker from the Adam West Batman show. I've never seen him as anything other than the Joker. It was amazing to see him in this, even though still not appropriate. So this movie, it's fun. It's a fun
really
movie.
fun.
It's not the book.
Yeah, I would say Arthur Treacher really steals the show.
Yeah.
Do you ever have this thing? I mean, we talk about this all the time, where you just sort of get launched back into a memory because you rewatch something that you watched as a child but never thought about, like, until this moment again. There's this line at the very, very end after she's found her father that Birdie like runs into Miss Minchin, and he's like, Sarah's found her father, like, isn't that wonderful, isn't that great? Of course they all thought he was dead, and Miss Minchin goes, what, Captain Crew is alive? And Birdie goes, of course he's alive, how could she find him if he wasn't alive? And I just remember as a kid thinking that line was so funny, and I wrote it. It's not like that funny, but I wrote it down because I I remembered
I
it
get that.
from watching it as a kid.
Yeah. I guess, something I've said on the show before is like a good adaptation is something that like it's less important that it's faithful, it's more important that it's good.
Yeah.
And I think it's, there's kind of a back and forth there where this isn't super faithful. It is a good movie. Like I'm not going to say it's not a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's a good movie. I can look at it in those merits. I guess the big problem for me is what it changes is so foundational to the story, which is
Yeah.
the character of Sarah Crew. The main character of the story is not the character from the book.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not just changing Amelia into a guy and he was on vaudeville.
Yeah.
That's really different. To me, this is not a good adaptation because of that specifically, even though I think it's a good movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest failure for me, again, like as an adaptation, is like the whole thing about Sarah's life is like her life has to be really bad because the whole thing is like it doesn't break her spirit, right? As bad as her life is, she's sort of tempted to break her spirit sometimes and always sort of recovers. And the thing about this movie is nobody could be that mean to Shirley Temple. Like you just can't do it. It was probably in her contract that nobody could be mean to her. And B, adding all of these additional characters means that there are all these people in the house that love her and care about her. And if you have that, then she can't be miserable, right? Like she can't be so put upon and so lonely and so sad. There's Bertie Minchin who loves her. There's Miss Rose who loves her, and there's Robin Hood, the horse teacher, who loves her. And not to mention his grandfather, who apparently lives across the street.
Oh yeah, it's his grandfather,
right,
who has Ram Dass. Blah,
blah, blah. So like that, I think that's just such a major failing of, again, like it ties into what you're saying, like of Sarah Crew as a character. It doesn't mean it's not a good movie. I would argue that it means it's not a very faithful adaptation of
right. That's
of
what I'm
the
saying.
book. Did you have anything else?
No, I don't.
All right, you want to move on?
Yeah, let's go forward like 45 years.
All right.
Anime again.
I want to make a confession.
Anime.
We did not watch all of this.
I was gonna talk about that.
Okay.
So, full disclosure: if you want to disregard everything we have to say about this particular one because we didn't watch the entire thing, I get that, and I might be one of you. But we couldn't watch the whole thing.
We skipped around
because, well, we watched a lot more. So, like when we did, so this ties in directly to Akage no An, the Anne of Green Gables anime
that we loved,
but we only watched like the first 10 episodes of it.
Yeah.
And we still want to watch the rest of the like 50 some odd episodes, but we haven't. But we saw enough at the beginning to know that like what we saw was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was really good. This was made by the same company. This was produced by Nippon Animation and a company called Aniplex. It was part of something. It was Nippon's World Masterpiece Theater. Akage no An was part of it too.
Interesting.
So this
and they did Pollyanna as well because we saw some ads for it.
46 episodes of it aired from January 6th until December 29th, 1985. It was directed by Fumio Kurakawa. It was written by Hidemi Kamada, Keiko Mukuroji, and Ryuzo Nakanishi. I did my best. If I didn't do those perfectly, I really do apologize. So there's 46 episodes of this show, and I think we kind of knew based on timing that we weren't going to watch all of them, but we didn't decide like, oh, we'll only watch the first 10 and then we'll stop or we'll skip around. We didn't decide that until we started watching it.
Yeah, because we kind of wanted to see the end because we kind of wanted to see how they did it.
Well, we kind of made the decision because we started it and we got like 2 episodes into it and we could tell that this was different than the Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah.
The thing that kept coming up, and I want everyone to picture a play happening, and one of the actors, there's a problem that's happened, and one of the actors looks over into the wings, and the stage manager is in the wings. I don't know why, but in my head I picture Nathan Lane. So I want you to picture Nathan Lane in the wings, furiously doing the stretch it out, like just keep going, gotta stretch it out.
This is our second Christopher Guest movie reference, but in A Mighty Wind, where they're in the wings going stretch it out, stretch it out.
Like that is this show. It is crazy how much they invent because they do. Basically, every moment in the show is one of 3 things. It's either something directly from the book portrayed in a very faithful, beautiful way.
Excruciating detail, yeah.
Right? Or it's something that is like referenced in the book or kind of technically happens in the book, but is stretched out to, as you say, excruciating detail. Or it's wholly invented.
Or it's nonsense, yeah.
And we made the decision we're going to watch about half. We watched 22 episodes of this 46 episode series.
Yeah.
So we watched a lot of it. It took us a long time because it It's hard to get through more than a few episodes of this show in one sitting.
It's hard to get through. And then the other pattern that we noticed as well is that, like, so each episode's what, half an hour, 25 minutes?
25 minutes, yeah.
The pattern that we noticed is it would be 20 minutes of
Stuff happening.
Just stuff happening. Much of it like a fever dream that you had after you read some of A Little Princess and had a weird dream about some random thing that happened to the characters that didn't actually happen in the book. And then 5 minutes of like the thing that's in the title of the episode. So then we would be like, oh, should we go to the next episode that we were originally going to skip? Because surely this thing is going to continue. And then it didn't. It would be something like completely different.
Yeah.
So it was like we could have watched just like 5 minutes of every episode to get the plot of the book. But we had to watch a lot of other stuff. Becky goes home to see her family, and they're on a farm, and she's doing work on the farm, and they can't pay the rent, and like this and that. And there's a new character named Peter.
How
and
much
we get
do
to
you
see
care about
Peter's
Peter?
family. I don't care about Peter even a little, but he's driving the pony cart, and he's cold, and he and Becky are running all around town trying to do a thing, and the cook is mean, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's so much.
It's a bit. It's quite a bit.
As opposed to Akage no An, which I think, as we mentioned, like every episode is just like a chapter of the book, like from beginning to end, beautifully realized, one chapter of the book as if brought to life on screen.
I do get the sense, because we stopped at around episode 10, they do start inventing things as the show goes on.
That's fair,
But
yeah.
what we saw was so faithful and perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it. This is not that.
Yeah.
It's okay. I was excited because Sarah is Sarah from the book.
Mm-hmm.
She looks exactly like Sarah. She is exactly as Sarah is described. She is much closer to the character of Sarah Crew. So I was excited about that.
Yeah.
It's just that everything took so long. Like, we find out about Carrisford next door halfway through the series.
Yeah.
And boy, to sit through, because every episode is 25 minutes long, and there's fully like 24 episodes between finding out about the guy next door and finding out about the missed connection.
Yeah.
It takes hours and hours and hours of viewing just to get to, it is the child.
Yeah, or let me give you another example,
Sure.
right? Like in the book. So first of all, one of the things that I really did like is, so my copy of the book is like a copy that I had as a kid, and it has, I don't know if they're original illustrations, they're certainly famous illustrations. And they're beautiful. And there were scenes in this that I am sure were like just the way that the scene is set, were lifted directly from those original illustrations.
Yeah.
One I noticed particularly was like when they're shopping for the doll Emily, like Captain Crew and Sarah like looking in a window at a doll. That just the way that it's set up is like exactly the illustration that I'm familiar with. So anyway, an example of sort of how they stretched it out, right?
I was going to say, in the book, how is it described?
In the book, it's described as they knew they wanted to buy this doll. And here's basically how long it takes. They went from shop to shop, and they got really discouraged, and it sort of took them all day. And finally, they decided just to walk and let the cab follow them. And sometimes they didn't even go in the shops. And then they came to one shop, and there she was sitting in the window. And Sarah knew her immediately and was excited. It's about a paragraph, right?
Yeah.
But that's basically it. In this, it's like
An entire episode.
Of they go to one shop, and they talk about the dolls, and the doll isn't right. So they leave, and they go to another shop, and they talk about the doll, and the doll isn't right. So they leave, and they go to another shop, and they talk about the doll. And then they go to another shop, and they want the doll, and they want the guy won't sell them the doll because it's just a sample doll. And they say, can we please have the doll? And he says, no. And then Sarah goes in and says, can I have the doll? And he says, oh, you're such a beautiful child. I will give you this doll for free and make all of her clothes. Like, it is so extended. It's so much more detail than perhaps we were interested in, I will say.
Yeah.
And I want to be sensitive to sort of the cultural context around like the way that this was made. Like, I don't want to be like, this is terrible because they added all this stuff. Like, I genuinely don't know like what the sort of cultural feeling around adapting classic novels into an anime form was, so I don't want to like dunk on it.
I mean, I'll make it even simpler than that. We watched it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't watch it the way it was created. It was created for people to watch one episode not even every week, one episode every week or every couple of weeks
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the course of a year.
This is fair.
Like, hey, it's Sunday night. Do you want to dip into the life of Sarah Crew for half an hour?
Sure.
And then leave that to go about our lives for
go
another week?
Go on our merry way.
You know,
yes.
and then we'll dip back into her life for half an hour.
This is
you know
all
what?
fair.
I might want to spend more time than I was given in the book with her, but to go through it all in a week,
Yeah.
it was excruciating.
Yeah, no. This is all fair.
And we watched it wrong.
We didn't love it.
We didn't love it. I wanted to love it. At the beginning, I wanted to.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was going to be like the Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They added a lot of religion to it.
Oh, yeah.
Did
They
you
were always
notice
going
that?
to church. They were so frequently in church.
Constantly going to church. And like the place where I noticed it is they did the scene with the baker that I love so much from the book, which, by the way, was not in the silent version. It was not in the Shirley Temple version. It is in this one, but she like finds the coin. And I can't remember if she goes before she talks to the baker or after, but she goes to like the vicar.
Yeah, no, she goes to the baker first, and then she goes to like the church, and she's like, I found this coin. Like, what should I do? And he's like, you should keep it.
Yeah. And then she goes back to the baker and then buys the bread.
Right.
And then gives it to the beggar, you know. So it's like stuff like that throughout. People were always just going to church to get to get inspiration and to figure out what to do. Just a very weird thing.
It was odd.
The other thing, and like this kind of this didn't start the tradition, but we haven't even brought it up yet, is the fact that like so far, and pretty much in every version, Becky is Sarah's equal. They're like exactly the same age.
Yeah.
You know, she's definitely like Sarah's little friend rather than someone whose life is much worse than Sarah's, who, even though she's older, looks up to Sarah.
And also is kind of stunted, like as described in the book.
Yeah, like Becky in this is not that. But the last thing I want to talk about is Ram Dass.
Oh, handsome Ram Dass.
He's a goddamn superhero.
Yeah.
This guy. It's crazy.
He's like a ninja. He just like does. What did he do? He like carried Mr. Carrisford like up the stairs, like in his wheelchair.
He carried him out of the carriage.
Yeah.
Like Carrisford is in a wheelchair, and Ram Dass is just like, well, I'll just pick him up and I'll walk him out of the carriage and place him on the ground, which is a normal thing that a normal human being can do. Every time he goes into Sarah's room, he climbs in through the attic window, and it's the same animation every time. Leaps down, flies down from the window,
softly lands,
light as a feather. It's crazy how much this has like put Ram Dass up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I've got. Do you want to move on?
Yes.
Okay. I feel bad 'cause there was like a 70s miniseries, like I said, we couldn't watch. But anyway, not a year later, there was a co-production between British and American producers of A Little Princess. It was a 6-episode miniseries that was like released on VHS. It was also released on DVD. And like the DVD version was an edited version. It was missing a lot of scenes. But some kind soul took the VHS version and the DVD version, and they took all the scenes that were edited out of the DVD version, put them back in from the VHS, and then put the whole thing up on YouTube. And I'm just so thankful for it because the entire thing is on YouTube, and I'm so happy that we got to watch it.
Bless them.
This was good. It won an award. It won the BAFTA in 1987 for Best Children's Program Entertainment/Drama.
This was very weird for me.
Yeah.
Because there was a moment that I turned to you and I said, I've seen this before. And then it kept happening over and over. Like something would happen or someone would do something or someone would say something. And I would say to you, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
I've seen this before. And it's just so weird for me. I don't know if everybody has the same kind of memory that I do, if this is like totally normal or weird. But like if I'm reading something or seeing something that I've read or seen before, like a book, for example, like, and I can always remember where I was and what I was doing when I read that passage or that book before. Like I have a very strong, like, sense, not sensual, but like sense memory of like, yeah, last time I read this, I was sitting in this house and I was doing this thing and I was doing this. Again, I don't know if that's weird or just totally normal that everybody does. But it was very weird for me to know that I had seen something before and have no memory of why I had seen it, where I had seen it. Like, my assumption is either that I got it like on VHS from the library at some point when I was a kid, or that they like showed it on PBS and I watched it. Those would be the two options, I would imagine. But I have no idea. But I did not think I had seen this until we started watching it, and I was like, 100% I've seen this before.
Totally.
Really weird.
Yeah. I had never seen it.
Yeah.
And I knew that for a fact. It was directed by Carol Wiseman, a lady, which is
a lady Carol.
Crazy that this story about girls was directed by a lady. Written by Jeremy Burnham. So okay, whatever. You know,
He's done other stuff.
he's done lots of other different things. Okay, Amelia Shankly as Sarah Crew, Maureen Lipman as Miss Minchin.
She's so good.
She's so good. Miriam Margolyes as Amelia.
I mean, like the tall and thin. We were talking about this. Like the
it's
two
the
of them are
C3PO
so good.
R2D2 thing.
Like that's such a classic. It's such a because you said to me like, God, they're like C3PO and R2D2, and I was like, I mean, the tall and thin and short and round is like a classic combination. It's
Yep.
like chocolate and vanilla. You know, like it's just two great tastes that taste great together. And there was no fat shaming, I will say, of Miriam Margolyes. That's just
not a
like the
bit.
shape of her body, and she was great and really good. And I thought went on a journey as
Mhm.
Amelia in this.
Can I just call this out?
Yeah,
This is the best one,
it's so good.
like by far.
I mean, this little girl that plays Sarah, like bless her, like she carried this piece and she did a great job. This was
Mhm.
by far the best human casting of Sarah Crew that we saw.
And they even made changes. She's definitely older
She's
than
a little
Sarah,
older, yeah.
but they did such a good job with her characterization that it didn't matter.
Well, she's supposed to be 11, and she is 11,
Yeah.
but she's just 11 from the beginning
Mhm.
and not like 7.
right.
Yeah.
So I just want to call out, like, so this was great, and we kind of loved it.
I loved it. I would watch it again.
I
It was
totally
great.
would. And I'm really glad we got to watch the version that we did that put back the stuff from the VHS
Yeah.
because all those little moments do make it better.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would have worked otherwise. Like, I actually didn't say this before, but I could really see someone, I don't have the energy for this, but I could see someone taking the 46 episodes of Princess Sarah and editing them down to
Like a
not-
book cut.
Yeah, not like a movie, but editing them down to a much shorter version that is just the book. And I think it would have been much better.
Sure.
This, it just impressed me so much.
Yeah.
Like it did things that I had been thinking about through all the previous ones. Like this happens to me constantly when I'm watching all of these adaptations, is I will start to think, like, just as kind of a thought experiment, like if I was adapting it, what would I do? And it gives me a way just to think about choices that people make.
Mm-hmm.
Not it's never about like, oh, well, I know how to do it. No, I'm no one. It's more just like, as I say, a thought experiment. One of the things that I'd been thinking about through all these different versions is I would actually start the story with Carrisford and Crew.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't start the story with Sarah.
Yeah.
Like, show their relationship first so that we have kind of a basis for the journey that Carrisford goes on at the end. Because he's one of the main characters, but we don't see him for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And the show opens up and it's just Carrisford and Crew.
Talking about diamond mines.
So it's David Yelland as Crew and Nigel Havers as Carrisford, both like reunited from Chariots of Fire.
Great.
Like, but I kind of recognize both of them. And they're both fantastic.
Quite a nose on that Carrisford there.
Yeah, and I had one of those moments that I have with you many times, which is like we get into a new thing after not really loving the ones we've watched up till that point. And I look at you and I go like, is this the good one? Is this really? Hang on, I don't want to get ahead of
we're
myself.
like, we don't want to.
I don't want to I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it. But
Yeah.
like this one seems like it's really good.
Yeah.
And then it just continually felt really good because then you meet Sarah and she was just very reserved and very quiet, but also very strong-willed and very strong, like just like Sarah should be. We're meeting other Indian characters.
Mhm. Like her nurse is in, like, this is a new character. Like this is
Yeah.
but like just I think they balanced adding stuff with stuff from the book so well.
Yeah.
Like they added this character of her I hope this isn't an offensive word. This is the word I'm familiar with literally from The Secret Garden
Yeah.
and this book, her Aya, her Indian like nursemaid.
Yeah. Let's assume it's not cool.
I mean, I assume it's not cool.
Right.
Like,
That's what I'm saying.
That would be my assumption.
Yeah.
But like, they added this character, and like, clearly someone that it gave a little bit of backstory about Sarah and showed a little bit of her life in India. That like, she's having this argument about like whether she can bring her books, you know, to England.
Mhm.
And then you see Captain Crew again, like once he's left Sarah back in England with this woman Anna, right? Is her name or her
Anna.
her colonialized
Well,
name?
yeah.
Back in India with this woman, and like she's very worried about Captain Crew and like his health. And then we find out later, like one of the reasons that they don't know anything about Sarah or where she is that this Indian woman just like totally disappeared, and like no one knows what happened to her. And I got like indignant, remember? And you were like, they were a colonized people. Like she has no loyalty to these people. And I was like, that's fair. That's
definitely.
really, really fair.
Yeah, be mad at the conquered lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the marginalized person.
Yeah, no, that's really fair. I was just, doesn't she love Sarah? And you were like, she's got to live her life, you know?
It's not her responsibility
her
at this point.
responsibility.
They're dealing with some shit. But anyway, I just want to say, like, the casting is perfect.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I think struck us from the very beginning, is that the casting across the board is so good. And I could go on about things that are good about this, but please, I don't want to interrupt.
You know,
too
one
much.
of the things I wanted to mention, like, I just another example of something I think like the anime went really overboard with. It's like, okay, this thing that happened in the book that took 2 minutes, we're gonna make it take an hour. This was more like, we're going to be really sensitive about which scenes in the book are just described that we're actually going to turn into scenes because they're actually going to be entertaining and good and tell you something about the character that you wouldn't just get from not seeing it, I guess. So here's an example, right? This is an element of Sarah's character that we haven't really mentioned or just briefly skimmed over. Sarah, her mother was French, and though she died when Sarah was very, very young, Captain Crew always spoke French to her growing up. So she never like sat down and learned French from a teacher. She's just fluent in French. She grew up like bilingual or trilingual because she speaks Hindustani as well. And when they arrive at the school, Miss Minchin says to her, "Oh, Sarah, like your father asked me to hire a French maid for you, so I assume that means he wants you to learn French." And Sarah's like, "Oh, that was not my assumption." And Miss Minchin's like, "Speak when you're spoken to. Be quiet." And so,
What?
and there's this and Miss Minchin is we are given to understand in the book, like, embarrassed that she herself like does not speak French because, you know, an accomplished lady would speak French. And so the French teacher shows up one day, and Miss Minchin's like, "Oh, this girl, like, you got to teach her French, and she does not want to learn French. Like, she's being real bratty and shitty about it." And the teacher's like, "Oh, that's hurtful to me because, like, I love my beautiful mother tongue. Like, I'm so excited to teach it to you." And Sarah is like, "Okay." And she stands up, and as described in the book, she just addresses him in perfect French. "Excuse me. I would like you to understand, my mother was French. I was telling the truth when I said I'd never learned French. I just sort of always have known French, and Miss Minchin just didn't understand. I'm so sorry.
This book's not very advanced. I kind of know everything that's in it.
She's been handed like this grammar, and she's like, what I was trying to explain is I know everything that's in this book. Like, I'm more than happy to learn anything that you would love, all in French. Anything that you would care to teach me, like, I'd love to learn, but like I might need a more advanced book than this, is what I'm trying to say." And the French teacher just like clutches his heart, and "Oh la la, Miss Minchin, I cannot teach her anything. She is French." And Miss Minchin is just embarrassed, and this is the moment that she sort of begins to hate Sarah. So this all happens in this miniseries. But there's this other scene that in the book is only described, which is that Ermengarde, who becomes Sarah's friend, is very stupid at French and very bad at French. And it's sort of described like how embarrassing it is that she is bad at her French lesson, and she like says things wrong, and the teacher has to correct her, and all of this stuff. And that scene is, they enact it in this miniseries. A, it's funny. B, it gives some insight into Ermengarde's character and into Sarah's character, because Sarah like feels sorry for her when she's being sort of humiliated in front of everybody. Sorry, that was a really long explanation, but I really do. That's one of my favorite scenes, when Sarah is just like, "All right, I'm just going to speak French to this guy, and maybe he'll understand where I'm coming from."
Well, no, I think it speaks to kind of a general thing I wanted to say about this, which is that I think the danger that happens with something like this, where you're adapting a classic, like, you're adapting this in 1986. How many people do you think in your audience have read A Little Princess? Like,
yeah.
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
This is a classic. And the audience you're gunning for with your show, they know the book. You could go into it thinking, "Oh, we'll just get an A for showing up."
Mm-hmm.
Like, we gotta hit the big things in the book. Ram Dass has to be there. We've got to have India. We got to have Miss Minchin. As long as we do those things, everyone's gonna love it. And I think that clearly the creators of this took a step back, and if they thought that, they put it aside, because they just went into it clearly asking, what can we do that will make sense as a story?
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure that what we're doing works. We have to make sure that it makes sense. We have to make sure that the characters make sense. We have to make sure they're compelling. We have to make sure that decisions make sense. There was one that I kind of loved, which is you have to explain why Carrisford isn't even bothering to look at the girls' school next door. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to explain that in something like this that's a longer version of the story, because it's not crazy that she would be there.
Mm-hmm.
What they do in this version is they add a scene where Carrisford goes out to the park with the large family. He goes out with like some of the kids.
Yeah.
And the youngest boy in the large family is very cute in this one. But the two of them are having a conversation. It's completely invented for the miniseries. It's not in the book at all. But the kid is saying to him, like, what about you live next to a girls' school? Why don't you check there? And it's like, as me as an audience member going like, this is what I've been saying. Why didn't you just check there? Like, this is so smart to kind of put the audience in. And then Carrisford looks at him, and Carrisford in this version, has this intense victim complex.
Yeah.
Because he got his best friend. He killed his best friend.
Essentially.
The guilt he carries for this is really intense.
Plus the brain fever.
Yeah. So he's going through some shit, and he basically says to the kid, like, yeah, that would be easy, wouldn't it? But life is never easy.
Yeah.
And the things that I have experienced are telling me that life is never easy. So why would I even bother? He's wrong, but it makes sense for his character.
Yeah.
Like, this is character motivated decisions. And his character's so consistent throughout, and it's true for everybody. I just love that so much thought went into it from a character perspective. I fucking loved it. Can I keep going on this?
Yeah.
I love the fact that the way certain people are characterized is nuanced in a way that isn't true in most of the other versions that we watched. So, like, let me start small. Let's start with the cook. Is the cook in the book, as written, is she an evil character?
No.
No.
She just is mean and put upon and does not care.
She's mean and an asshole and selfish.
Yes.
But she's not evil. The version of the cook in this is that.
Yes.
She's not evil. She's just a very flawed character who dislikes Sarah and is threatened by her and is mean to her. But it's not because she's evil. I think we understand every moment that she's doing it. We understand why. We don't agree with it. You know, we don't respect her for it because she's being a jerk, but like, it makes sense. She is allowed to be a full-fledged character.
Yeah.
Amelia is fantastic, and she's not just I'm put upon. Her character is not as simple as just I'm put upon. She pushes back against Miss Minchin a lot.
Yeah, she just doesn't succeed.
Right, except until the end.
Until she does, yeah.
Which is great. But let's talk about Maureen Lipman as Miss Minchin.
Oh
Let's
my
talk
gosh.
about this version of the character.
Yeah.
This version, she's not arch. She's not evil.
Yeah.
She's flawed.
Yeah.
And kind of mean.
Yeah.
But not in an evil way.
No.
I love this version of Miss Minchin.
Yeah, and because it's a mini series, right? Like she gets a little. I just think sometimes with a good mini series, like the thing that the character needs is a little space to breathe and like be drawn out and be sketched out, and she does get she gets space to sort of go on her own journey. And she doesn't have to like ramp up into being Cruella de Vil right away because she's only got 87 minutes to tell this story. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she's got some room to grow. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the beautiful chemistry between Carrisford and Ramdas in this version?
I mean, sweetie, we talk about beautiful chemistry. This version has the best chemistry between pairs of actors of anything that we
Yeah.
watched. Can I just give a quick preamble?
Sure.
So, like, the chemistry between Becky
Yeah.
and Sarah
Yeah.
is
Becky's
fantastic.
great in this. And Becky is very clearly older than Sarah, I would say.
Becky's so good in this, but the two of them together are perfect. Crew and Carrisford have chemistry. Minchin and Amelia have chemistry. Everyone has chemistry with Sarah.
Yeah.
There's so much good chemistry, but yes, let's talk about Carrisford and Ramdas.
This is more of a sexual thing. Ramdas in this is very, very handsome, and he just has this like roguish way with him where he sort of teases his master into there's the scene where like the doctor comes and says like, oh, Mr. Carrisford, like you're very ill, like you mustn't drink spirits. And so then they have this like sort of little teasing argument between them about like whether or not he's allowed to have his alcohol. And at one point Ramdas is like, he's Carrisford's like, where's the decanter? And Ramdas is like, I lost it.
Yeah.
But in such good humor, and we thought maybe they were in love.
They have quite a lot of chemistry.
And then we had the full Baker scene, which
Yep.
which you
The
loved.
Baker scene is done beautifully. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is in the book. It's the best version of it. It's the best version it could be. It is so good, and it's exactly what I wanted to see. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So anyway, so this was really good.
Mhm.
I'd recommend anyone watch it. It is available on YouTube until someone takes it down. So I
Yep.
would recommend watching it soon.
I was so delighted by how cinematic it was.
Yeah.
Like it's edited very precisely. It does the exact opposite of the thing that I've kind of railed against on the show so many times, which is, oh, we have to show a character has to enter the scene and they have to exit the scene, and we have to treat it like a play. This is so willing to cut on perfect moments. It's just beautifully cut. They did such a great job with the minimal time and budget that they had. It's great, and I loved it.
Cool. Do you want to move on?
One more.
One more. We're closing in on the home stretch here.
Let's jump up to 95. Okay, so there was this movie. Let's give some background on it. Before we even talk about it, let's give some background. It was directed by Alfonso Cuarón. This was only his second movie ever, and his first English language movie. His first movie was about it was kind of like an Alfie type thing, I think, Spanish language. He would go on to do many things. He kind of had this adaptation thing going where he did A Little Princess. Then he did Great Expectations, the one with Ethan Hawke.
Sure.
He did Y tu mamá también, which
It's not an adaptation.
I fucking love so much and is so completely different than these movies. Like he went from doing these like lush, lavish adaptations to like super handheld college student sex road trip movie.
Sure.
And it's so fucking good. Then Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
As you do.
Which like another adaptation of a children's book.
There you go.
Children of Men, Gravity, and Roma. Like what a
What a career.
just he just ended up so far from where he started.
Yeah.
I think it was written by Richard LaGravenese. It starred Liesl Matthews as Sarah Crew. So let me go through a few things right now. She was born. Liesl Matthews was a stage name. She was born Liesl Ann Pritzker. And you might say, Pritzker, I've heard of that name. Well, the Pritzker family, they own Hyatt Hotels. And two members of the family founded the Marmon Group, which controlled a large number of industry and manufacturing and things like that. To give you an idea of how big the Marmon Group was, it was sold to Berkshire Hathaway. The numbers that I found for it is the way that the sale worked is first they did like a 60% stake to Berkshire Hathaway, and then the remaining 40% later. That 60% stake was $4.5 billion.
Like you do.
So a lot of money. And I just want to read this quote from the Wikipedia entry. In 1995, Jay Pritzker, the co-founder of Hyatt, stepped down, and Thomas Pritzker took control of the Pritzker organization. When the former died in 1999, the family split the business into 11 pieces worth $1.4 billion each. And, parenthetically, chose to settle a lawsuit from two family members who apparently received $500 million each in 2005.
One of them was this girl.
One of them was Liesl Matthews. This girl's fucking rich.
She's exactly our age, and she has $500 million.
Yeah, I guess it really does make her like Sarah, where she started rich, ended richer. It's just, Sarah had that whole middle part where she had no money whatsoever.
Right.
I don't think Liesl Pritzker ever had that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think she had a moment where she had less than the $500 million.
Sure, but her family was always rich.
Fair enough, yeah.
I don't think she ever wanted for anything.
Yeah, no. Apparently she's become like quite a big philanthropist, and she's very interested in like things like clean water in Africa and like all that stuff.
Fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
She's doing good. She's doing good for the world with her money, I have heard.
Eat the rich. That's all I'm saying.
I mean,
so
okay.
Liesl Matthews is a stage name to avoid conflict between her divorced parents.
Which was, I think, part of the reason she didn't get that $500 million and had to sue for it.
Yeah. So apparently her dad said that if she was going to be credited, she was going to be credited as Liesl Pritzker Bagley. And Bagley was the name of her mom's new husband.
Uh-huh.
Her dad said, well, if you want to credit her as Liesl Pritzker Bagley, she's not going to do the movie. and they wanted her to do the movie because they wanted her to be an actress.
Yeah. They didn't need the money.
No. So Matthew is her brother's name.
Gotcha.
So she went as Liesl Matthews.
This is all extremely complicated.
She is now Liesl Pritzker Simmons, and she lives here in Boston.
She does.
So
I wonder if Simmons is like the same family as Simmons College.
Could be.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows?
I mean, she probably married a wealthy man.
Yeah, I didn't look into him. I only looked into her. Other people who are in this movie: Eleanor Braun as Miss Minchin.
What did I say when Eleanor Braun came down the stairs?
What did you say?
I said Eleanor Braun is so beautiful.
She is
not great in this movie, but very beautiful.
Well, hang on. Hold off on
judgment.
Hold off on judgment for a moment.
Okay.
Liam Cunningham is Captain Richard Crew, which some of our audience may know as Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight from Game of Thrones.
I don't.
Some of our audience might know that. He's a delightful actor.
Never seen an episode of Game of Thrones in all of my life.
Some cool people. Vanessa Lee Chester played Becky in this.
She's been in a ton of shit.
She's the little girl. She's Malcolm's daughter in The Lost World.
There you go.
I'm just saying, if you need someone to do some gymnastics and kick a velociraptor through a window,
like you do,
you go for Vanessa Lee Chester. That's what you do. Taylor Fry as Lavinia. Heather DeLoach as Ermengarde.
Explain who this is.
Heather DeLoach, in addition to being perfect in this role,
she's so cute.
She's the bee girl from the Blind Melon No Rain video. And also, quick sidebar, little footnote, Weird Al Yankovic got her to be in his Bedrock Anthem music video very soon after as the bee girl in that as well. She's the bee girl from the No Rain video.
So adorable.
Kelsey Mulrooney as Lottie. Rusty Schwimmer as Amelia Minchin.
She's been in other stuff.
Arthur Mallet plays Charles Randolph. So Carrisford is not the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
They've removed that, and there's other changes they made. But Arthur Mallet was what's his name from Hook? What's the guy's name? Lost his marbles.
Oh, Toodles?
Toodles lost his marbles. This guy. And Errol Satahel as Ram Dass.
Yes.
So there's all the people that are in this. Before we talk about it, let's just establish, how is this movie regarded critically, and would you say by members of like our generation and younger?
I have no idea how it's regarded critically.
I'll tell you very well.
Okay.
It's got like 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that, like incredibly well critically.
I would say that women who are my age love this movie.
Yeah.
I would encourage those women to watch it again.
Mm-hmm. Because you were one of them, right?
The thing is, as I was watching this, I was like, of course I've seen this before. And I couldn't, it wasn't like a favorite, right? It wasn't one that I like kept coming back to. And I realized why. It's because I love the book so much.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of problems with this movie as an adaptation of the book A Little Princess that I dearly love.
Well, you made a decision a number of years ago that I think we've both looked back and kind of reevaluated as not a great decision, which was we've talked about it on the show before, we had a list of movies to introduce each other to.
Yeah.
And I think you really wanted to introduce me to A Little Princess.
Yes, I wanted you to read A Little Princess.
And I
knew you wouldn't do it. It wasn't on the card. Like, it wasn't even part of the conversation that you would ever read A Little Princess.
Right. So you thought, like, well, I got to introduce him to the story in some way, so I'll show him this very fine movie that I saw when I was younger.
And you were like, Alfonso Cuarón, I'll watch it.
I'll watch this. I love him. And we watched it, and I'm just going to be honest with you. Even at the time, I didn't like it. But I knew you did.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to ruin it for you. I don't want to be a jerk, you know? And not even that, like, me saying I didn't like it would ruin it for you.
Sure.
You know, I didn't want to either ruin it for you or make it the kind of thing that you never wanted to bring up because you knew we would disagree about it.
Sure.
I would feel bad if that happened. So I just kind of kept it to myself. And then we watched it again as a result of all this. My opinions on it, I actually think I like it less now than I did before.
Yeah, I also do.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Just, okay. Let's talk about a couple things.
Sure.
This movie has a moral, which is brought up right in the beginning and hits you over the head with it explicitly many, many times. It is a 4-word moral. All girls are princesses. I think that's dumb. The point,
beautifully put.
The
Go
point
on.
of the fucking book is not that all girls are princesses. It has nothing to do with girls, and it doesn't have anything to do with princesses in the sense that they mean it in this movie, which is people that like feeling like the idea of like feeling like a princess, feeling adored, feeling loved, feeling special. Like, yeah, everyone is special. Like everyone is special. But the book, I said this before, like the book A Little Princess And the character of Sarah Crew is someone that the idea of being a princess is very literal. It is a literal idea of I want to act like a princess, meaning I want to behave in a dignified manner at all times and be kind to other people. Here's what it is. Being a princess to Sarah Crew in the book is an inward state of being that informs how she acts towards other people. In this movie, being a princess is about how other people treat you. And I just think it missed the point, like kind of by a lot. It doesn't make sense. The other thing too, again, this was the thing that you didn't like from some of the earlier movies, is that we're introduced to Captain Crew and like he immediately calls Sarah like my little princess.
Yeah.
That's her nickname from her father, which is not a thing from the book at all. So like the whole princess thing in this, it doesn't work for me. If anything, they hammer it home like more so than they do, than the book actually does. Like they bring it up over and over again. And it's this whole thing of like, all girls are princesses. Even if you've lost your fortune and you're in rags, you're still a princess. But it's not about like you experiencing the world in a certain way. It's about how other people are supposed to treat you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's no scene that does that more, that kind of illustrates your point more than where Sarah makes this speech to Miss Minchin.
Yeah.
Miss Minchin has been yelling at her and all this stuff, and she's like, oh, you still think you're a prince? How do I do Eleanor Braun doing an American
I don't know.
accent?
It's really difficult.
Oh, you still think you're a princess?
It's kind of like that.
And Sarah says to her, like, didn't your daddy ever tell you that you were a princess? Didn't he tell you that all girls should be princesses? Didn't he? It is like a big speech.
It's a big speech.
And Miss Minchin storms out
She's
of there.
like so upset.
It's like, this is, what is this? I'm sitting there like going like, oh, what am I watching?
Yeah.
Because this is a separate thing. You're making a piece that is not a Little Princess.
Yeah.
You're making your own thing that is using the words from a Little Princess and the character names. But to your point, that was never the point of the concept of being a princess in the book.
Yeah, I mean, sidebar, Miss Minchin is literally Cruella de Vil. She literally has the white streak in her hair.
Yeah.
Like she is Cruella de Vil in this. Like at one point, you were saying like about Maureen Lipman's performance. Like she's not arch. She's not evil.
Yeah.
And in this, like, there's a point where she literally like pauses in the doorway and goes like, "You still think you're a princess?
You're not a princess anymore."
Yeah,
and
like
then the lightning clashes and everything.
It's really not very good.
Can I say a nice thing about this movie?
Yes.
This movie is fucking beautiful.
It is so pretty to look at. Like the colors are so rich and saturated, and there's a scene in India at the beginning that's really beautiful, and then there's such a contrast like in the light, like when they go to New York and it's so dark. And
New York? Wait, what?
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is set in fucking New York.
This is the thing I was talking before about, like, the book being set in London was a choice. I don't know why the choice was made, but it kind of had to be a choice.
Mm-hmm.
There's also one big thing about it that I think is important, and I think it starts to open up the idea of how do you do this now? How do you do this story now when so much of the story depends on really kind of positive implications and positive depictions of colonialism?
Yeah.
That's challenging. And a totally valid answer would be, well, we just don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't stop adapting A Little Princess. If someone wants to make that case, I think they have a perfect right to do that, and I would understand. I don't think I'm in that camp because I loved the story so much, and I think some of the things that make the story so strong don't really have anything to do with colonialism. But the relationship between India and England is a really close relationship.
Yeah.
Like they're tightly integrated with each other, not because both sides equally, want that.
Yeah.
But that is true. So like the book being in London and Sarah having this relationship with India and growing up there and Ram Dass coming there, like everyone in London is kind of on the same page as far as what the relationship is between their culture and Indian culture.
Yeah.
Right? New York doesn't have that.
Yeah.
New York's just a third thing. So if you're going to bring any of the Indian stuff into it, it doesn't carry any of the baggage in a good way or a bad way that it does if it takes place in London. And I just think whether whether it's worse or better, it's just less interesting.
Well, not only less interesting, but weirdly enough, this movie, okay, so they're in New York. So Sarah and Ram Dass are essentially the only people that we know of that have any kind of a relationship to India at all. And as far as I recall, they never have a conversation where Sarah's like, "I grew up in India, where you're from."
Yeah, not once.
Like he's just this sort, like he's very much out of place, and he's very much like this sort of just mystical Oriental character. Whereas in the book, like he's really humanized, and it talks the author talks a lot about like he was lonely. Like he's this young guy, like he's away from his homeland, like all he has is his monkey, and he's lonely, and hearing Sarah speak his language is so wonderful because he hasn't heard anyone speak his language in such a long time. And so that's why he's drawn to her, and he has this connection to her.
Mhm.
In this, he's like basically a magician. Like he's just sort of appears and disappears, and like it doesn't even talk really that much.
Yeah. Like you can, if you have the character be he's the Indian servant, the Indian manservant. That's potentially problematic and an oversimplification of something that's really complicated. It's worse though if you promote him to like mystical savage.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's the worst
That's actually
thing
worse.
to do. And
Yeah.
that's what this movie does.
Yeah, and one of the things, like, talk about like, okay, we've now replanted this in New York, so we can't have like the Cockney Becky. So who is the quote unquote lower class? Okay, so Vanessa Lee Chester is a black actress, right?
Sure.
Like we've made Becky black. That makes sense. That makes sense for
Yeah.
New York at the time. And
if you're going to do the
if
story
you're going to
this
do
way, that makes sense.
this way, that makes sense. And she's really put upon, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's this scene where she's like, like cleaning the house or what have you. And Sarah's like trying to talk to her, and she's like, I have to go. Like, we're going to get in trouble. And like Sarah's talking to Lottie, who's the little girl.
Mhm.
And Lottie's like, oh, we're not supposed to talk to her. And Sarah's like, why? And Lottie's like, I don't really know, but I think it's because she has dark skin. And it's like, oh, okay, well, there's racism sorted then. Like, it never comes up again. Like,
Yeah.
never, ever once. Like, okay, we've now addressed it, and I guess we can just move on. Cool.
If you're going to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
This makes so many changes. Like, let's go through some more of those changes. So it's set during World War One. It's kind of this is clearly like more of a remake of the Shirley Temple one than it is an adaptation of the book.
Because Dad is British and
Yeah.
has to go to army.
Right. And he gets hurt, and there's a whole thing that happens where he does not die,
Yeah.
but he is mistaken for
An American because he's trying to
Yeah.
save Toodles' son.
Right, because the American soldier's dad is the guy next door,
Right.
who has the Indian manservant.
Right.
So
So it's the whole thing.
like the fact that
It
there's an
doesn't
Indian manservant has
Nothing
nothing to do with her growing up in India and a guy knowing crew. It has nothing to do with that. It's just a complete coincidence that this Indian man happens to be there.
Yeah.
So they meet this guy, and he looks at me and goes, "This is not my son." But he seems like a nice guy.
I'll take
He's a
him home.
British man with movie amnesia,
Yeah. It's
The kind
not
of
not how amnesia works
You
at
know
all.
everything about yourself except who you are.
Yeah.
And you're constantly just like, I don't know who I am. Basically, that's like Wolverine and anyway.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So he takes him in. So now Crew is next door to his daughter.
And this is the thing I hate. I hate a misconnection. I hate a constant misconnection. He's walking past and he doesn't see her because his eyes are bandaged. She doesn't see him because she turns the other way. Like, just like these exaggerated misconnections that never happen in the book because, of course, he's dead.
Yeah.
But I just don't like it. I hate a misconnection.
I don't like it either.
Yeah.
And this does that.
And then to add insult to injury, Sarah. Okay, I guess we got to talk about this.
Sure.
The character of Sarah in this movie is like such a manic pixie dream girl. She's so like, first of all, she doesn't even really seem particularly precocious, like in terms of her imagination and like the things that she thinks about. And like, Sarah in the book, she'll just be thinking for a while and then just sort of say something that people find shocking because she's been pondering it for a long time. And she's an old soul. Like, that's how I would describe her. Like, she has a lot of like very wise thoughts for being so young. This is not that. This is like, I'm going to kind of flout the rules of the school because I don't really understand, and I'm really sorry when I do it, but like, I guess I would just question why we have to do it that way. all of the girls love her, every single one except Lavinia. And so like when she's sent up to the attic, there's this whole like group of like 6 girls that like are following her up there, which is again like fine, but not, if you're going to make her lonely, like she's not lonely and miserable. Like there's this scene, the whole point, right, of the like, Ramdas having this idea to like bring a little joy to her life is he's watching her through the window and he sees like how sad and alone and cold and scared she is. And there's this scene where he's watching her like have a party with these like 6 screaming girls that are running around and laughing and giggling. And he's like, oh, her life is great. Like she doesn't need anything from me. Like what is happening?
Can I dig into that for 1 second?
Yes.
So this is one of the problems I had with this is that, okay, so let's talk about Sarah in the book. She's going through all of these really terrible things. What is the thing she avoids doing? What is the thing she doesn't do that anyone, any normal person would be expected to do given all of these hardships?
She doesn't cry.
She doesn't, I would even say just even more generally, she doesn't give up.
Yeah.
You know, she never gives up. Instead, she holds on.
Yeah.
That is her big strength. That is the demonstration of her strength, is that she holds on. She like is happy occasionally and finds joy occasionally, but like her strength is not, oh, I'm happy all the time.
Yeah, no, she's
the
kind of
face of all
shitty
this.
sometimes.
But she fucking holds on.
yeah.
In this, it seems like the choice isn't between giving up and holding on. The choice is between being sad and being happy all the time.
So she like chooses like she plays a prank on Miss Minchin where she like dumps ashes on her head and like never gets caught. And the question of her like being hungry or underfed or like not well cared for never comes up at all. She looks great the whole time and is clearly fine.
Like she's fine.
Yeah.
She seems
likes
to
her
be
life.
enjoying
Yeah.
her new life. She's got her friend Becky. She gets to do whatever she wants, essentially. She gets to flout the rules. All the other girls are constantly doing things to make her life easier. There's a
The thing with the necklace.
there is a fucking caper
Yeah.
in the middle of this story.
Yeah, because this story needed a caper.
So there's a whole thing. There's so much to unpack with this. So she has a locket that her dad gave to her that in it has a picture of what her dad and her mom.
Her mom, yeah.
Yeah. And when Miss Minchin sends her up to the attic, she takes all of her stuff that Miss Minchin kind of bought for her and paid for, but she takes the locket too.
Which was hers originally.
Yeah.
And she's like, I could have you arrested for taking this.
And that even comes up later where like all the cops are there and we kind of imagine what the conversation would be is she's yelling at the cops going like, she's a thief. And the cops are going, what did she steal? And she goes, this locket. And they say, well, where'd you get it? And she says, I stole it from her.
Like, oh, where did she get it? Her dead dad gave it to her.
Dad gave it to her. She's a thief. Like, that's a terrible conversation to have with somebody.
But anyway, the girls like have this caper where they have to steal her locket back and like they distract Miss Minchin and then
Miss Minchin's out and they have to
Yeah.
steal it from her office and they have to distract Amelia and Becky's part of
and
it.
Amelia
they're-
runs off with the milkman and like
Like-
Sarah encourages her to do so.
Well, that didn't happen during the caper.
No,
that was a
but like
separate
it
thing.
was a separate thing.
But like the caper happens. Like, why is there a caper? Why?
There's no need.
There's all these action scenes that are
Yeah.
added. Like the caper is added, and
There's
then
a chase.
the whole thing at the end is there's a chase where they like Sarah has to like climb this wooden board from her window into the house across
in the pouring
way.
rain because the police are there about the locket.
And
I
it's
guess
so big and it's so dramatic and like the book is so beautiful in the simplicity of like Sarah just walks up to the front door of this place
She's
and
like-
knocks on the front door and says, I'd like to return your monkey. And
I got your monkey here.
the beautiful thing about it is the irony of like she doesn't know that what she is doing is the most impactful moment of her life.
Yeah, she just wants to return a goddamn monkey.
Like that's kind of beautiful in its
Yeah.
simplicity. You're not fixing it by making it an action scene in the rain.
No. Okay, so then she's trying to hide. So this is again okay. So there's a couple things in this that we were like, oh, someone was highly influenced by the Shirley Temple movie because there's
Yeah.
a scene where she has to go like light Lavinia's fire and Lavinia's like, I'm cold, and they have this little exchange that happens in the Shirley Temple movie.
Shirley Temple like dumps the
Dumps
ashes
the ashes
on her.
and like
Yeah.
Lavinia's like, can you cover me with my blanket or whatever? That is not from the book. She would in the book she would never be allowed into like the girls' rooms. Like that's not a thing that she would be allowed to do.
She also never would do that because that's not how a
It's
princess
not how
acts.
a princess would ever
Yeah.
behave. And in this, she like pretends to like put a curse son Lavinia. Anyway, it does not matter. So anyway, there's this chase scene. She ends up in the house next door. Her dad is there because he's like living there, I guess, now being cared for by these people, but he's got movie amnesia. And she like goes. So this is what happens in the Shirley Temple movie too. She like goes to hide from these people who are chasing her, and it turns out he's like sitting in the room in the chair, and she turns around and sees him, and he's there. And there's this whole like extended thing where he's like asking her like, are you okay? And she like won't look up at him, so like it's drawn out like that she doesn't recognize him because she like isn't looking up. And then finally she looks up, she's like, oh my god, it's my dad, and she's like screaming like,
but he doesn't remember her.
He doesn't remember her. And Miss Minchin comes in and sees Captain Crew, clearly recognizes him, and has this moment where she goes from like movie villain to like extreme movie villain, where she's like, I've never seen this man before in my life.
Which is a fucking gamble, because in that moment
she doesn't know he has amnesia.
She has no idea. What a gamble.
Unless Toodles has like mentioned it while they were searching the house, like, oh, be careful, like not to scare this guy because he's been living with him.
Let's not just assume that something happened off screen that explains her kind of batshit decision.
So anyway, the police start to drag her away. It is the pouring rain. She's screaming for her dad. Her dad comes outside. Finally, like something tweaks in his mind. He recognizes her voice. He screams, Sarah, and what did I do?
You fucking collapsed into a puddle. I've never seen you cry this much during a movie, ever. And I didn't want to take the moment away from you. I didn't say a single goddamn thing the entire time because you were having a moment, and I respect that.
You'll understand someday.
This movie's not a bad. It's not a bad movie.
It is a bad movie. It is a bad movie. Just that what did I say when I was crying? What did I say to you?
Something about how you were mad that it was manipulating
you.
I
said I was upset because I had been emotionally manipulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
I only disagree. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it stands on its own. I think that we're looking at it through a very specific lens, and it does not stand up to the scrutiny we're putting on it.
That's entirely fair.
I just really, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it's just...
I don't like the all girls are princesses thing. I really don't like it. Like on a very visceral level, I find it gross.
I just find, like, comparing... It was so weird to watch this right after the 86 version, too, because that one struck me by being so thoughtful, and every single character interaction and all the character motivation was clear, and all the decisions were clear, and everything made sense. To this, where, like, I just feel like they didn't even think about it. Can I run through some?
Sure.
Okay. In the book, Becky, on Sarah's birthday, Sarah gets all of these beautiful presents.
Yeah.
Becky gives her a piece of shit.
Yeah,
she basically
like
gives her
rags.
shit. She gives her a little pillow that she made that says like what?
It says like many happy returns with like some pins, and it's made out of like dirty fabric.
And it's spelled wrong, and it's just awful.
And
what is Sarah's reaction to it?
Sarah loves it and Becky says to her, I know it's not anything, but I thought maybe you could pretend it was like made of diamonds. And Sarah's like, oh my God, that is the sweetest thing. And she's so happy.
Yeah, Sarah loves it. And that's done in a lot of the versions that we watched. In this one, two things. One, Becky gives her the pillow after Sarah has found out that her dad is dead.
She's already up in the attic.
She's already in the attic. So, like, now she has nothing.
Yeah.
So she's getting a gift while she has nothing. She doesn't have beautiful gifts to compare it to.
Which would mean something to anyone. Like, I have nothing and this person's giving me this
right?
gift, no matter what it might be.
So the second thing is, though, it's kind of beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Like, it's got this very, like, folk art quality to it. Like, she's embroidered, it looks like a quilt, like she's embroidered this beautiful scene, and she's used these, like, beautiful colors and silks, and, like, how does Becky know how to do that? Like, it is a lovely piece of craft that she gives Sarah.
And Sarah loves it, but because of all those things we mentioned, Sarah loving it doesn't say anything good about Sarah's character.
Right.
They also do a thing earlier where
it's genuinely very nice.
They're just taking things away from her. So Emily, the doll,
yeah,
it's a very specific thing in the book where she's explaining to her dad, we don't have the doll. I will find the doll. I haven't met her yet. I know her name is Emily, and I'm just waiting to meet her.
Yeah.
And she says all these things about how, like, you'll be gone, and I'll talk to Emily, and dolls can move. She says the thing to Becky about how dolls can move.
Yeah.
This is all things she's imagined. All of that shit, all of that is given to her dad.
Yeah.
He says all of this
to
her.
Here, I bought you a doll. Her name is Emily, and perhaps you might like to imagine that dolls can move around. She's like, what? Really? They do? And it's like, no, that's Sarah's thing. That's the thing that Sarah likes to think about.
So Sarah's like, all the things about her character are taken away from her constantly throughout the movie. They fucked up the bakery scene. I was so mad about this. She finds money, goes into the baker, buys one thing. There's never anything. I mean, I guess there is a thing where she's like, someone drop this.
Yeah.
And then she immediately buys some stuff with it. She buys one nice roll.
Like a cinnamon bun.
Yep, it's a treat for herself.
Yeah.
So
Because she's well fed. This girl is not hungry.
yeah, she doesn't look hungry at all.
She just wants a treat.
So she doesn't have the thing where the baker like gives her extra because of her strength of character. And then when she goes outside, there's like a flower lady with her 3 kids, and they all look shitty. And Sarah just goes up to one of them and gives
her
them
the
the bun and then walks away.
And then but then what happens? The flower lady says, "Give her a flower," and she turns around and she says, "For the princess."
Yeah.
It's like she just gave her a fucking cinnamon bun. Like this, like well-fed girl who maybe is wearing rags for fun gave your child a cinnamon bun.
Like it didn't mean anything at that point. It didn't mean anything close to what it meant in the book.
Yeah.
She just like bought herself a treat. It wasn't like she was buying food because she literally hadn't eaten in a long time.
Yeah, she's there's nothing in this movie about her being hungry.
Yeah. And nothing ever happens again with the baker or the girl.
Yeah.
Like that's never brought back. And that's the whole point. I've said this before on the show. It's like a setup without a punchline.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to keep that part of it, why didn't you keep the second part? Why didn't you keep the follow-up? Because the entire reason that happens in the book is so that you can find out the impact that Sarah has on other people. And you find out at the end of the book that the baker actually established a relationship with this kid.
Yeah, like in the book, the idea of her giving the bread to the beggar is like she has gone far above and beyond what any ordinary person would do or would be able to do or would think to do. Like
Yeah.
she's given her so much when she herself had nothing. In the movie, it's more like she's kind of done a nice thing that anyone would kind of feel that they were obligated to do, which is I have this thing that I don't really need, and someone needs it a lot more than I do, and I'll give it to, like if I don't do it, I'm kind of a monster. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I don't necessarily care to do it. Like I'm not inspired to do it. Like this evening had to go pick up my dad's prescription from the pharmacy because he needed me to, because he had a procedure at the hospital and was loopy on like painkillers. Like, did I want to? No. Would I be really a jerk for saying no, I'm not going to do it? Like, of course. Like I'm happy to do it. But like it didn't like, it wasn't the kind of thing where it was like, wow, what a nice person. What an amazing
Yeah.
thing to do. Go pick up your dad's prescription from the pharmacy 10 minutes away. You know what I mean? Anyway.
I guess I only had one last little thing to talk about with this movie, and then I wanted to talk about the India thing.
Sure.
And it has to do with that. There's just this one moment where this to me is thoughtless. Ram Dass is talking to Crew. Crew has amnesia at this point, and Ram Dass is saying something about India.
Yeah.
And Crew goes, India.
It sounds familiar.
And Ram Dass looks at him and goes, India, you know it? And it's like,
Yeah, he does.
of course he fucking knows it. He's British. You are an Indian man. And you can't tell me that an Indian man, certainly at any point in the last several hundred years, but especially like in the early
At this
1900s,
time, yeah. The height of the empire.
would think for a second that he could meet a single British man
And be
who didn't know
astonished.
about India. And I just feel like if you ignore it, that's worse than dealing with it badly.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to my big thing. So I'm going to get up on a soapbox for a second. I don't have a prepared speech the way you did on yours.
I didn't have a prepared
But
speech.
I feel really strongly about this, that like I really love this story, and I like the aspects of the relationship between Sarah and India in it. If you're going to do it, fucking go for it. And if you need to make changes, make those changes. Humanize the Indian characters. Make new Indian characters. I like that. Fucking get into it. And if part of the story is that there's even a hint that what England did was wrong, include it. That's fine. Because the story is still about a girl who loses her father.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's about.
Like she didn't colonialize the fucking Indian subcontinent. Like she didn't personally do it. So like
No.
it's not going to necessarily reflect badly on Sarah.
Like I actually don't think it detracts from her story, but it kind of detracts from the whole thing if you just ignore it. But at least like the 86 one took a step in the right direction, which was taking these characters and humanizing them
Mhm.
to the same degree that it was humanizing all of the characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think you need to deal with it. I think you have to actually go for it headlong. Say we're doing it. We're dealing with it. Let's fucking do this.
Yeah, and I think the thing I kept turning to you and saying was like, it's a kids movie, and you were like, I know, but but like there are concepts that kids can understand. It's a sophisticated kids movie. Like you can explain that it wasn't good.
If the movie can be about death,
yeah,
it can be about something that's a little more complicated, like imperialism.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, it is very complicated, but like, yes, I don't disagree. Like, you can present something in such a way that even to a child, they would understand something bad happened here that we are not necessarily in favor of doing.
And then, just as a little capper on this, how then do you explain the seemingly loving relationship between Ramdas and Carrisford?
They're in love.
If they're in love.
They're actively in love.
Despite Empire, they are in love.
Which is fine.
Which is totally fine, and,
Anyway.
I'm here for it. That's all I've got. Do you want to wrap up?
Let's wrap it up. You want to do some quadrants?
Let's do some quadrants. So I hope people are with us. They're still with us. If you love the 1995 version,
we're sorry, but like watch it again. Read the book and then watch it again. I feel like you'll come around.
Yeah. Okay. 1917. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Okay. Do you think that it was successful?
No.
Not to us.
Not in a modern standard. I mean, this movie was made literally over 100 years ago. So who are we to fucking judge?
Right. 1939. The Little Princess. Shirley Temple. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
I think they cared about Shirley Temple. Was it successful?
Yes.
Yes, it was a good movie. Princess Sarah in 1985 anime. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Like passionately.
Deeply. I would, maybe too much. Was it successful?
No.
Overall, I'm going to agree with you. No.
Yeah.
Parts of it. 1986 miniseries. Was it made by people who cared about the source material, do we believe?
Yes.
Yes. Was it successful?
Yes.
So successful, it's so fucking good. 1995. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Absolutely not.
Do you think they cared about the 1939 Shirley Temple movie?
A little more.
Yeah, right? Was it successful?
No. As an adaptation of the book A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett? No.
I'm gonna.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
It's just
it's
no.
so
This story is
frustrating.
completely different story. I'm sorry. Like maybe it's a successful movie if you just watch it without any context. Even then, I would question it.
There's better movies out there.
There's better movies out there. I mean, you could say that about anything, I guess.
Yeah, but this one, it's really true.
All right.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapter Parish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
I'm imagining something.
What are you imagining?
I'm imagining going to bed. Do you want to go to bed?
Let's go to bed.
It's very late.
No funny joke. We're tired.
We're tired. Good
Bye,
night.
everyone.